employee reviews. This is super important because we have never done this before. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first, let's have a real conversation. Not every employee likes yearly reviews, and in fact, most employees actually dread yearly reviews. Employees fear that something unexpected could come up, leaving them questioning their position and their job security. How many of us have gone into a review before feeling a little bit nervous, not knowing what to expect, thinking that we're going to have this great review and then end up not? And then others see it as nothing more than yet another conversation with their management team from which they'll walk away with a half-hearted good job and have not really gotten any real information about how they can use to grow, what they can do to make things better. So how can we make the process more enjoyable to our employees? Let's get them included. So let's get the employees to give us feedback first. So before we do anything trying to do these job reviews, let's get the employees to tell us what's going to work for them. So let's ask them what they think of the current review process and how we could improve it. So in this case, we don't actually have any current process. So let's try to see what each employee is looking for, how we could get them to enjoy it and not dread it. So these are the 3 types of reviews that I looked up. They seem to be the most common reviews. So first one is self-evaluation. Self-evaluation allows employees to judge their own performance against predetermined criteria. So for example, when you are making your self-evaluation form, you could put something such as the employee arrives on time every day and is ready to work at their scheduled time. And then the employee can judge based off of that. So if they are, in fact, here every day, ready to work at their scheduled time, they can give themselves a good mark. And then it would make them think as well, maybe I do come late here and there, maybe I am repeatedly late. Usually this is taken into consideration during an official performance review to allow for a more thorough discussion and to ensure employees understand how they will be judged. That's the most important thing about doing a self-evaluation, is making sure that you get that scoring across to the employee, because sometimes the employee will think, okay, I do really well here, so I'm going to give myself a higher score, thinking that that higher score means average, that they're doing it all the time. Whereas when the manager is doing it, they may get a lower score because to the manager, for example, a 3 to 5 would be considered average and doing it consistently, doing their job well. So that is super important, just making sure that you get that scoring across. The 360-degree feedback looks at an employee's performance by pulling feedback from inside and outside sources. It includes feedback from peers, direct and non-direct supervisors that the employee works with regularly. And additionally, the 360-degree feedback reviews can include an evaluations of the employee's character and leadership skills. Now this one I think is extra important given the fact that for us, we have 2 offices, so our manager doesn't always work directly with each employee, given that they might not be in the office as much. The last one is the most common one that most offices do. It is called the rating scale. It's similar to the self-evaluation, but you don't have that self-evaluation feedback from the employee. So it's really just manager scoring the employee. So it's based on a set of employer-developed criteria, which can include behaviors, traits, competencies, or completed projects against which employees are judged. And then you want to be sure that your employees fully understand where success and failure falls on the scale. So again, similar to that self-evaluation, you want to just make sure that the employees know the difference. So here's my thinking. Let's combine these methods. Would we combine the methods? Well, I kind of touched on it a little bit. So we have 25 employees and we have never done a formal appraisal. So let's kind of tread the waters, test the waters, see what works for each employee. There's so many different types of job evaluations that we could do. Let's take the 3 most common, combine them, and see where that takes us. Again, we have employees split in 2 offices in 2 cities, so in some cases the manager doesn't always work directly with the employer, kind of like how I mentioned in my last slide. So I think this is why we should combine the methods. So how will the combination method work? Let's start with our timeline. So it is December 7th, so we need to start reviewing employees in the beginning of January. I know it's crunch time, it's soon, but we can do it. This way we can get on a schedule of doing them at the beginning of the year to review the previous year. By doing this, it'll promote success for the upcoming year. So if we start the reviews in the beginning of January, and we'll be reflecting on the past year's work. So by reflecting on last year's work in the beginning of January, it's going to set a mindset to our employees that, okay, I have this whole year to make myself better, to succeed more. Who's going to do the reviews? Well, the manager. The manager will meet with the department supervisors to schedule times with each employee. So, for example, in our billing office, our supervisor will be in this meeting along with the front desk supervisor and our clinical supervisor. We're going to all sit down, we're going to have a list of our employees, we're going to have our employee schedule, and we're going to sit with the office manager and we're going to try to figure out where we can get these employees in. The most effective way is probably to take 2 weeks, just take a big chunk, so the first 2 weeks, and let's just cram all of these people in as fast as, or not as fast as we can, but let's try to get as many people in a day that we possibly can. You can alternate by department if needed. The manager will also be in close contact with the supervisors from the other office to gather information on their employees. The manager will conduct the reviews along with the direct supervisor in one office, and once the reviews are completed in this office, they'll travel to the next office to complete the reviews there. Steps to creating our system. So step 1, let's gather job descriptions and the core behaviors manual. What you're going to do is you're going to pull from these to create the self-evaluations. You're going to use the rating scale system to make the grades. Alter these self-evaluations to make them the official rating scale used by management. Step 2, send out self-evaluation forms to the employees and have them get started. You want to have them get started on this pretty soon, because sometimes it does take a while, because I know employees don't always like to grade themselves. And again, just for example, the scoring system I kind of went over, we want to make sure that we just explain it very clearly. So 0 would be not applicable, 1 to 3 would be unsatisfactory, 3 to 5 average or consistent, 5 to 7 above and beyond, and then 7 to 10 goes way above and beyond. Average is a good thing and means that they are consistently doing their job and doing it well. So you want to just make sure that you repeat that. Step 3, we're going to use SurveyMonkey and generate our 360-degree review surveys. We can pick from pre-populated questions, assign a few employees and their direct supervisor to complete the survey based on one individual employee. These surveys will come back to us anonymously. Step 4, we're going to give a due date for these surveys based on when that employee's review is scheduled. Once the survey is received, the manager will then complete the rating scale. Step 5, just make sure you have folders ready for each employee where we can put all of our documentation. We want to make sure that right before we do the review, we have our 360 surveys back, the rating scale evaluation, and any documentation needed. So for example, if an employee made an error, you want to have that error with you so that you can show it. The employee will bring their self-evaluation with them to the review, so the manager and employee can have a side-by-side look at how they scored, and allows for more open communication. When you're in the review, you want to make sure that you present all information effectively and clearly. You want to explain why the employee did score in each question and compare the self-review to the rating score. Also make sure that you use a calm and reassuring tone. If you're monotone or you come across in a cold tone, the employer may not absorb the information as well, which means they're not going to be able to succeed as much as we had hoped. After the review, you want to set a follow-up. So if an employee scored low or didn't have a good review, discuss ways that they can improve and offer to schedule a follow-up review 3 to 6 months out to review progress. Don't just limit an employee to have a review once a year. because if they feel like they need a review, let's give them one. After the reviews are completed, management will document and place copies of self-evaluations, 360-degree surveys, and rating scale reviews into each employee's file. Also, make sure that you offer the employee to keep a copy. This way that if they have a really good review and they're proud of it, they can have a copy. If they didn't do as well and they want to work on things, they might want a copy too to see where they can improve. Once everything is done and documentation is complete, the manager will then send out an email to get feedback from the employees on how they like this process. Getting feedback now while the reviews are still fresh will give us plenty of time to revise for the next. The last thing I want to remind everybody, so even though this is going to be new to us and it is our first trial, let's strive to make it perfect the first time, but don't get too caught up in it and allow ourselves for room for modifications and revisions. Don't be too hard on ourselves for this. We're a team and we have this.